Welcome to this Soundscape Books recording of The Shadow-Bound Crown, an exclusive fantasy novel written by Darian. Enjoy your listen.
Chapter 1. The Obsidian Summons. The air in Seraphiel Ashworth's sanctum was a calculated chill, as pristine and unyielding as the man himself. Early morning light filtered through the thick, smoke-gray glass of his windows merely muted the Obsidian Keep's perpetual gloom, rather than dispelling it. Within his Spartan chambers, every object held its designated place. Quills aligned, scrolls neatly bound, vials of shimmering essences arranged by hue on a polished blackwood shelf. This meticulous order was not merely aesthetic, it was a physical manifestation of Seraphiel's mind, a fortress against the chaotic currents that perpetually churned within the shadow-cursed realm of Thessarian. His day, like every other, began with the purification. He stood before a basin of obsidian, its surface polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting his own unblemished features and the single silver dagger he held. This was not a weapon, but a consecrated tool. With practiced, near-invisible tremor, he pricked the tip of his left forefinger, watching a bead of rich, crimson blood well. It was a ritual of focus, a pact with the very essence of his being. Blood magic in its myriad forms was the lifeblood of Thessarian's nobility, but the Obsidian Court, in its infinite wisdom and fear, had long ago legislated its use down to a rigid dogma, permitting only the purest and most controlled applications. Seraphiel's self-purification was one such permitted act, a disciplined exercise in honing his internal energies, sharpening the precise arcane pathways that allowed him to unravel the truths hidden within the minds of others. The drop of blood fell, hitting the water in the basin with a soft, almost imperceptible plink. Rings of crimson spread, then dissolved, purifying the water. He cupped his hands, lifted the now charged liquid to his lips, and drank, feeling the familiar cold fire ignite in his veins. It was a subtle awakening, a sharpening of all his senses, a clarity that bordered on the painful. This was his discipline, his strength. It was what made him the Royal Interrogator, the unblinking eye of the Obsidian Court. Yet Seraphiel's path to this hallowed, feared position was far from conventional. Unlike most, his unique affinity for blood magic had manifested not through diligent study, but as an unsettling, innate gift, an instinctual connection to the arcane pathways of life essence itself. From a young age, he had found he could discern the subtle currents of intent and truth hidden beneath the surface of conversation, a skill honed by an almost obsessive desire for precision. The Obsidian Court, ever pragmatic, had recognized this terrifying talent, less a blessing and more a controlled anomaly, and swiftly recruited him, molding his unsettling abilities into the perfect instrument for interrogation. His early years were a crucible of rigid training, learning to temper his raw intuition with the court's ironclad dogma. He was taught to control the surge of power he felt when touching another's truth, to keep his own emotions locked away, and to wield his gifts with surgical, unfeeling precision. It was a lonely path, separating him from the casual warmth of human connection, forging him into the cold, unyielding blade of justice he had become. This daily purification, a ritual both physical and spiritual, ensured he remained pristine, a vessel for truth untainted by personal bias, or so he believed. He wiped his mouth with a linen cloth, the motion as economical as a predator's. As he placed the cloth back on its hook, a sharp, insistent rapping echoed through the heavy oak door of his sanctum. It was too urgent for a morning report, too loud for a casual visit. His enhanced senses caught the faint scent of fear clinging to the messenger beyond. "Enter," Seraphiel commanded, his voice a low, resonant baritone. The door swung open, revealing a young obsidian guard, his uniform impeccable, but his face pale. "Royal Interrogator Ashworth," the guard stammered, bowing deeply. "A summons, urgent and immediate, from Her Majesty, Queen Isolde. Lord Valerius, he has been found." The guard's voice trailed off, thick with unspoken horror. Seraphiel's brow furrowed, a faint line of disturbance in his otherwise composed features. Lord Valerius was an elder statesman, respected for his wealth and influence, if not his moral rectitude. For the Queen to summon him directly, before even the captain of the guard, this boded ill. "Lead the way," Seraphiel said, his blood-tinged clarity already sifting through possibilities, discarding the mundane. This was no ordinary death. The air in Lord Valerius's private chambers was thick, cloying with a metallic tang of dried blood and a faint, acrid scent Seraphiel couldn't immediately place. Even before his eyes fully adjusted to the opulent gloom of the room, his enhanced senses recoiled. This was not just a death, it was a violation. The chamber was a testament to Valerius's exorbitant tastes: heavy velvet drapes, a four-poster bed draped in crimson silks, and ornate furniture carved with grotesque, grinning gargoyles. But now it was a tableau of horror. Lord Valerius lay sprawled on the pristine white fur rug by his bedside, his body twisted at an unnatural angle, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at the intricately painted ceiling. His skin was parchment thin, his features sunken and hollowed as if carved from ancient bone. He was utterly, completely drained of blood. A junior medic, barely older than the guard who'd summoned Seraphiel, hovered nearby, looking distinctly ill. Two grim-faced Obsidian guards stood at attention, their postures rigid with contained revulsion. Seraphiel knelt, his movements fluid and precise, ignoring the guards' nervous glances. He did not touch the body immediately, rather allowed his gaze to sweep across the scene, taking in every detail. The room, while opulent, showed no signs of struggle or forced entry. Valerius's nightclothes were undisturbed, save for the single gaping wound over his heart, a clean incision, impossibly neat, indicating a blade of preternatural sharpness or a spell of precise cutting. Then he saw the symbols. Drawn in a shimmering, dark substance that could only be dried blood, they covered the floor around Valerius's body in a complex, almost pulsating geometric pattern. They were archaic, unlike any of the standardized blood magic sigils taught or practiced by the court. These were older, wilder, whispering of forgotten lore. A shiver, not of fear, but of profound recognition, traced its way down Seraphiel's spine. He had glimpsed similar glyphs in obscure, forbidden texts, locked away in the deepest vaults of the keep. Markings associated with primal forces, not merely sanctioned blood sorcery. He reached out a gloved hand, not to touch the symbols themselves, but to hover inches above them. His skin prickled. There was a residue, faint but undeniable, a low hum that vibrated beyond the usual echoes of blood magic. It was a cold, alien hum, like the distant thrum of a forgotten engine, distinct from the warmth and familiar resonance of the magic he himself wielded. This was an anomaly, a subtle disjunction in the arcane fabric of the deed. It tasted of something far older, far darker, than the controlled, ritualized blood practices the court permitted. He kept this observation to himself, his expression giving nothing away. "Report," Seraphiel commanded, his voice even, devoid of emotion. The junior medic cleared his throat nervously. "Royal Interrogator, we found him, this way, just after dawn. The chamber was locked from the inside. No forced entry. No struggle. His lordship, he was entirely drained." "And the symbols?" Seraphiel gestured towards the blood-painted floor. We do not know, sir," one of the guards chimed in, his gaze fixed resolutely on the wall. "They appeared to be drawn after the fact. No other markings on the body, save the wound." Seraphiel straightened, his eyes narrowing slightly. No other markings, no sign of struggle, locked from the inside. He walked the perimeter of the room, his steps soft, his eyes missing nothing. The undisturbed nature of the room spoke of a victim who offered no resistance, or one who was already helpless. The precision of the wound and the ritualistic nature of the symbols pointed to a deliberate, calculated act. "Leave the scene untouched," Seraphiel ordered, turning to the guards. "Secure the chamber. No one enters, no one touches anything until I give the command." "Yes, Royal Interrogator," they chorused, visibly relieved to have a clear directive. As Seraphiel exited the chambers, the unsettling hum of the unknown magic still resonated beneath his skin. This wasn't merely a murder. This was a statement. And the anomaly, the cold, alien resonance, suggested the statement was being made by powers the court had long believed vanquished. The Obsidian throne room was a cavernous maw of polished black rock, its soaring arches and obsidian pillars seeming to swallow the very light. Even at midday, the shadow curse that clung perpetually to Thessarian seeped into the chamber, deepening the gloom, making the air heavy and oppressive. At the far end, perched upon a throne carved from a single, immense shard of jet-black obsidian, sat Queen Isolde. Her regalia, while regal, seemed to weigh heavily on her slender frame. Her face, etched with lines of weariness, was a testament to the endless burdens of ruling a realm perpetually besieged by shadows, both magical and political. Chancellor Vesperian, a man whose silver hair and meticulously tailored robes spoke of decades of service and deep-seated authority, stood at her right hand. His expression was one of grave concern, his usually calm eyes now shadowed with worry. The rest of the Obsidian Court, a scattering of nobles, advisors, and lesser officials, huddled in hushed clusters, their fear palpable, their whispers like the rustle of trapped spirits. Commander Kale, a hulking figure in dark plate armor, stood sentinel by the immense doors, his hand never straying far from the hilt of his greatsword. Seraphiel entered, his presence cutting through the anxious murmuring like a shard of ice. He walked with an almost spectral grace, his long, dark coat swishing softly, his expression unreadable. He knelt before the throne, his posture one of perfect deference. Royal Interrogator Ashworth, Queen Isolde's voice, though weary, carried the unmistakable weight of command. "Rise! You have seen Lord Valerius?" "I have, Your Majesty," Seraphiel replied, rising fluidly. His gaze flickered across the terrified face of the court, then settled on the Queen. He noted the subtle tension in Isolde's jaw, the slight tremor in her hand as it rested on the armrest of her throne. "Tell us," she urged, her voice low, "tell us what blasphemy has befallen a man of the court, in the very heart of the keep." Seraphiel recounted his observations, his voice dispassionate, precise. Lord Valerius was found in his chambers, entirely drained of blood. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, a single, precise incision over his heart, and around him, drawn in his own blood, a complex array of symbols. Archaic, Your Majesty, not of the common blood sigils, they speak of older, perhaps forgotten practices. He omitted the detail of the strange arcane residue, reserving it for his private report. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled nobles. Drained of blood? Countess Lyra, a woman famed for her delicate constitution, clutched her throat, her eyes wide with horror. "This is an abomination!" "Unspeakable," Lord Gareth thundered, his face pale with fear and indignation. "Such acts have not been seen in centuries, not since the purges of the Wild Kin." Queen Isolde sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of her crown. "Indeed, the implications are dire. For such a defilement to occur within the Obsidian Keep, it challenges the very authority of the court, the very safety of Thessarian." She looked at Seraphiel, her eyes pleading for answers. "Royal Interrogator, what does your impeccable intuition tell you? Who would dare such a heinous act?" Before Seraphiel could articulate his still-forming suspicions, Chancellor Vesperian stepped forward, his voice calm, resonating with sagely wisdom. "If I may, Your Majesty, and with all due respect to the Royal Interrogator's thoroughness, the description of these symbols, they strike a chord, a most unsettling chord, with the ancient records." All eyes turned to Vesperian. He paused, allowing the silence to stretch, building the tension. Many years ago, before the Great Banishment, there were whispers of such glyphs, markings associated with a lineage now thought to be extinct, or at least safely purged from our lands, the Nightfall line. A fresh wave of murmuring, laced with genuine fear, swept through the court. The Nightfall name was synonymous with betrayal, with wild, uncontrollable magic, with the very shadow demons the court had sworn to extinguish. Their leader, the disgraced Prince Temius Nightfall, had been exiled to the Shadowfell wastes years ago, his name erased from official histories. The Nightfall Lineage? Queen Isolde's voice was sharp with disbelief, though a flicker of fear danced in her eyes. "Chancellor, you cannot truly suggest, after all these years," Vesperian raised a calming hand. "Not a direct accusation, Your Majesty, merely an observation. The similarity is striking. The unique power they wielded, their affinity for deeper, older magics, and the blood rituals associated with them. It is well known they did not adhere to the court's sanctioned practices." a bloodless death, arcane symbols, it bears a striking resemblance to the dark rites described in the texts concerning their umbral kin pacts. He let the words hang in the air, the implication clear: Temius Nightfall. Seraphiel observed Vesperian closely. The Chancellor's tone was measured, seemingly objective, yet the subtle emphasis on nightfall and umbral kin was carefully placed, like stones guiding a path towards a predetermined conclusion. It was a masterful, subtle manipulation, steering the court's panicked suspicions precisely where Vesperian wished them to go, avoiding any deeper, more inconvenient truths. Seraphiel felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. He had felt the peculiar resonance, the wrongness of the magic at the crime scene. It was not the nightfall magic as recorded, but something else. But the court, steeped in dogma and fear, would readily grasp at the convenient scapegoat offered. A flicker of unease, uncharacteristic for his usually impassive demeanor, crossed Seraphiel's face, though he quickly suppressed it. Vesperian's calculated precision felt too perfect, almost rehearsed. The Nightfalls, Lord Gareth spat, his face contorted with revulsion. They were banished for these very blasphemies. If one of them has returned, then Thessarian is in grave danger, Countess Lyra wailed. Queen Isolde held up a hand, silencing the panicked outcry. Her gaze fixed on Seraphiel, her voice firm once more. Royal Interrogator, this matter is of the gravest urgency. You will investigate this thoroughly. Every lead, every whisper will be pursued. If indeed this is the work of a Nightfall, or any who practice such unspeakable magic, they must be brought to justice. Immediately. Find this culprit, Seraphiel. The peace of Thessarian depends on it. Begin with locating this Temius Nightfall. We must know if he has returned, if he is connected to this abhorrent act. The Queen's decree echoed in Seraphiel's mind, a rigid, unbreakable chain of command that bound him to the hunt. He was being ordered to chase a ghost, a convenient culprit for a crime that whispered of a far deeper, more ancient darkness. Even as Commander Kale began marshalling the Obsidian Guard, preparing to descend upon the desolate Shadowfell wastes, Seraphiel's owned intuition pulled him not towards the chase, but back to Lord Valerius's private chambers. There, a subtle, primal resonance had lingered, a chilling anomaly that defied the court's easy accusations, suggesting the real enemy lurked closer than anyone dared imagine. His path was clear. He would find Temius Nightfall, but not in the way the court intended. For in the deepening twilight of the coming days, the gates of the Obsidian Keep would open, not to a fleeing culprit, but to a defiant prince. Bound, unkempt, yet radiating a silent, predatory grace, Temius Nightfall would be brought back in chains, his dark, shimmering eyes destined to meet Seraphiel's own in a confrontation that promised to unravel not just a murder, but the very fabric of their fractured world. Meanwhile, in the deeper, rarely visited chambers of Chancellor Vesperian's private study, a different kind of quiet settled. Vesperian, his silver hair immaculate, his robes precisely tailored, sat before a meticulously organized desk. His quill scratched softly across a parchment, not a formal decree, but a personal journal, its pages filled with elegant, precise script. His face, usually a mask of calm authority, held a faint, almost imperceptible gleam of satisfaction. "The pieces are moving," he wrote, his words carefully chosen. "The Obsidian Court, so complacent in its dogma, so blind to the true nature of power, will be precisely where I need them. The wildness of the Nightfall will serve its purpose, a convenient shadow to distract their short-sighted queen. And Ashworth, his purity, his rigid adherence to method, will be his unwitting key. He seeks truth, but he will uncover the truth I wish him to find. The catalyst is set. Thessarian will be reborn, not through their feeble, diluted magic, but through the crucible I forge." A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated from a hidden compartment within his desk, a sound akin to the cold, alien resonance Seraphiel had felt at the crime scene, but far more controlled, almost tamed. Vesperian's lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. The serpent stirs, and soon its coils will embrace the world anew. He sealed the journal, tucking it away, his eyes glinting with a dangerous, deeply rooted ambition, completely unseen by the panicking court above. The true game had just begun, a game Seraphiel would unknowingly enter.
Thank you for listening to this Soundscape Books recording of Chapter 1 of The Shadow-Bound Crown, a fantasy novel written by Darian Cross. We hope you have enjoyed it. Please subscribe so you do not miss the next chapters and our new releases. Goodbye for now.